everyone, I'm Karsten.
And I'm Brianne.
And today we are finally digging into the generals of Khans of Tarkir.
Even after the first commander set, these new wedge commanders bring new ways to play and build commander decks with their color combinations. And first we're going to be taking a look at Anafenza the Foremost. And I really like her just because she's a 4/4 for 3. I mean, those stats are good on any creature. Her first ability, the +1/+1 counters, I'm not crazy about it. But the fact that she sits around and keeps creatures from being put into graveyards makes her awesome.
We have several different archetypes for this particular general. One of the archetypes that we had thought up is a human tribal deck, because she's already human soldier. She already fits into that creature type, but plus her colors help with the human tribal.
I mean, normally when people play humans, they play white humans or white-red, but there are a lot of really good black humans, like Skirstag High Priest, for instance. And of course, green gives you a lot of good humans that everyone also overlooks. So when you put that together, and the fact that if you play human lords, she gets a buff for them, you get to play some of the best humans from Magic's history, and you couldn't really do that in her wedge before.
White, black, green also hold some of the best removal in the game, and also some of the best hate bears in the game. Having a little bit of both, just overall hate everything, blow up everything, seems pretty obvious with her as well.
So of course I think there would have to be a little bit of a Captain Sisay package going on, because there are a lot of good legendary creatures in this wedge that would contribute to that deck. And then you get all the best removal in the format, so basically everyone's gonna hate you, but it's gonna be awesome. The last archetype that we have for Anafenza is what I like to call +1/+1 counter, not shenanigans. There's a certain spore fellow that shall go unnamed that's really obnoxious. So that deck has already been done, but if you want to play with +1/+1 counters, but you don't want to completely go all out, Anafenza's really good because she puts +1/+1 counters on your creatures, so you can take advantage of a lot of the stuff with Scavenge. You can take advantage of Champion of Lampholt, which I think is one of the most underrated creatures in the format. But once again, you get to do all of that without being just completely obnoxious.
So as far as Anafenza stacking up against the rest of the green, black, white wedge generals, what do you think?
I still think Carador's the best. I mean,
Me
Teneb's awesome. He's classy because he's a bling dragon. I love Doran, but you really have to build around Doran. So the thing that I like about Anafenza is she's generically good. And I know some people think that's boring, but sometimes I just want to play the colors and I want a commander that's good, but I don't have to build around them. They just do something helpful for me, and she fits that.
Next up, we have the general for my favorite wedge, Narset Enlightened Master. She's an awesome human monk. The artwork is awesome. You have rose petals floating in the background. She's like jumping in slow motion. Just so much awesome. Overall, she is just going to be ridiculous.
So, of course, the main archetype with Narset is going to be just shenanigans. If you look through magiccards.info or whatever, and you just go with the idea of, what would I want to cast for free? Time Stretch, Sweepers, Omniscience, yeah, I mean, it just, it builds itself. You just stuff the most obnoxious things that you could possibly want to cast for free into a deck, put some draw power in there, put some mana ramp in there.
Put some top of the library manipulation in there as well.
Give Narset a couple ways to have evasion, and you have a deck. Congratulations. It's not that hard. Of course, the thing you could do to narrow down a Narset deck would be to play Super Friends with her, because you just use her to cheat Planeswalkers into play. So you can just play a lot of Planeswalkers with her. That would be a good way to narrow down the good stuff to a certain non-creature permanent type.
The more Planeswalkers they print, the better the Super Friends decks get, because the more options they get, and the more tools they get. So that's a deck that is just going to get better with time, better with age. So as far as Narset goes, how do you think she stacks up against the other red, white, blue generals?
I would rather play Numot. I don't want to exile my Kiki-Jiki or my Consecrated Sphinx or my Stoneforge Mystic or other creatures. I'd rather just play Numot. I think this color combination is really good at spell slinging, but I'm not a spell slinging fan, so I'd rather just play Control. And to play Control, I feel like you need some creatures.
I like Narset because she kind of falls into the middle for me between spell slinging and more aggressive tendencies. Unlike Ruhan, who's all about aggression, Narset can do aggression and spell slinging, and she's not forced into one deck type like Zedru. Zedru's just group hug.
Okay, the next commander we're going to talk about is Cicybrood Tyrant. She's really awesome. I really like her because I love graveyard shenanigans, let's face it. Any commander that has graveyard shenanigans, I'm gonna love. She gives you zombies, which is cool, and she wants you to put stuff in your graveyard. Of course, the archetype that immediately comes to mind is a dredge deck, because you can just play a lot of dredge cards, you can play cards that are good when you have a lot of creatures in your graveyard, you can play stuff like Extractor Demon, which is going to hit people when stuff goes to your graveyard, and then if you just toss in an Eldrazi for shuffling it in.
And along with the whole graveyard theme, you know, nothing comes back from the dead better than a zombie. She already produces zombie creature tokens. She's not herself a zombie, so it doesn't seem obvious to maybe make a zombie deck around her. But she has good colors for zombies.
It's really flavorful to me to have this non-zombie, the spellcaster, who's making the zombie army. It's a very Liliana type thing. This is a zombie deck with ramp. So you can ramp really hard into your army of the damned. There's
so many ways to build zombie decks, and now you can build zombie decks with green in them, and that is totally awesome and different.
So of course, you're putting things in your graveyard, and we've kind of been talking about archetypes that require a lot of creatures, but what you could do is just play a Reanimator deck. In this deck, you wouldn't really care as much about making the zombies as you would the fact that she fills up your graveyard, and this color combination has some really sweet fatties to reanimate because you have green. Play Dread Return because she gave you zombies, and so you flashing back Dread Return's really easy. It would just be a nightmare, I think.
So, comparing her to the rest of the black, green, blue wedge, what do you think?
I think she didn't really give them anything that they didn't already have. I mean, the Mimeoplasm is already hardcore graveyard shenanigans. But the fact that she screams Zombie Tribal makes me happy, because right now Zombie Tribal's kind of in the Grixis area, and she gives you Zombie Tribal with something a little bit different.
Cici is definitely more interesting than Damia. She's something different than Mimeoplasm. The only disappointment that I have is that she's a Naga shaman and not a snake shaman. Next we have the bear puncher himself, Ciroc Dragonclaw. Man, he is a total badass. Everything about him. He comes in the rug colors, red, blue, green, and those colors are already ridiculous. He has flash, he's coming in when you don't want him to, and at the same time, he makes it to where control decks really can't do anything about his stuff.
The thing I really like about him is he's anti-control, but he's blue. You don't have to waste counter spells resolving your creatures.
I think it seems pretty obvious that running just a big smash face dude deck. Since you're playing red in this deck, you can play a lot of burn spells that deal a lot of, deal damage to everything, but you can kind of scale those burn spells to only kill things that are your opponents, so none of your stuff dies.
I can't really think of anything crazy to build around Ciroc besides just playing fatties and turning them sideways, except for a bear punch deck. I mean, I know he's killed a bear, but I mean, I think just having a bear army follow him. Because, like, mono green bear tribal is really awesome, and we love bears, obviously, but you get blue with your bears. That means you can play
Xenographed.
Oh, so you can make everything a bear. So you can make Ciroc Dragonclaw into a bear.
But yeah. This just seems like a wacky, fun deck that you could actually make pretty good. Especially since Ciroc gives them all trample. So, as far as comparing him to the rest of the Rug generals, I think he is a brand new addition to what other generals in the wedge were already offering. Making, I think, the red, blue, green wedge, like the most versatile wedge so far. It has the most things to offer.
Commander options.
As far as commander options go, it has something for everyone. Ciroc, while you could play big creatures in some of the other ones, especially like Riku and Maelstrom Wanderer, Ciroc is a guy who's committed to that strategy. I'm an aggro guy, I make my creatures really, really good, and that's something that is different.
I think I have to agree. Which leaves us the wedge that always it gets left out in the cold with commanders, and it didn't this time. Because Zergo Helm Smasher is awesome.
Oh,
he's super aggressive. He's just like stomping all over the battlefield. I mean, you look at him, he looks angry.
One thing that's really neat about him, though, the fact that he has to attack each combat, you know, so that could be bad or good if it weren't for the fact that he's indestructible as long as it's your turn.
So he's never gonna die.
He's never going to die if he's attacking. So you don't care if he attacks every turn. And so one of the things that you could do with this is kind of have sorcery speed sweepers. So it's kind of a one-sided sweeper. Everything dies except for him. And so then he's going to go in and smash whoever the heck he wants.
And he is in the magical Voltron club of being a 3-turn clock. It would just be really scary. I'm sure someone has done this deck already, but that doesn't make it any less terrifying, because all 3 of those colors have sweepers.
And he has a funny little clause at the end of him. Whenever he deals damage to something and it dies, he gets a +1/+1 counter. I read that, I'm like, that sounds familiar. Where have I seen that clause before? And it's the clause on a lot of the old vampires from way, way back when. So I had this crazy idea, why don't we make a vampire theme
Well, if you look at his art, he's really pale. He already looks kind of a little vampire-ish, like he doesn't get a lot of sun anyway.
And I'm sure he drinks the blood of his enemies and eats their hearts and all. You know, why couldn't he lead an army of vampires? Plus, he has all 3 colors to play all the vampires. And you're like, what white vampires are there? Both of Soren 2.0 and Soren 3.0. So you could play all 3 Sorens in this deck, which he's the Mac Daddy vampire anyway. And then red and black, there are tons of vampires in red and black.
I feel like this dude, if someone offered to turn him into a vampire, he'd be like, can I still smash Helms? And it'd be like, you can smash Helms and do it during the night. He'd be like, okay, where do I sign up?
So how does Zergo compare to the other ones in his wedge?
As far as I'm concerned, the rest of his wedge is Kalia, and the dragon that's not Kalia, and the angel that's not Kalia. That's his wedge. So, considering he is a good commander, he's Zergo. He's not the orc warrior who's not Kalia. So, he's good, and he's not Kalia.
Zergo is just such a breath of fresh air to this particular wedge, and he is very, very welcome.
I think he and Ciroc need to get into a fight. Ciroc, the character, and Zergo, the character, got into a fight to the death. Who would win? Let us know in the comments below who you think would win.
So those are the generals of Khans of Tarkir. This video is a little late, so I'm sure a lot of you guys have already built some of these generals. So let us know in the comment section below which generals you've built and what kinds of decks that you've built with those generals. Until next time, I'm Karsten.
And I'm Brianne.
And thanks for watching.